welcome everyone to the 5th episode of The Founder's Story. And the superpower we're going to talk about today is sales as a craft, as an art, as a skill.
You can't say, oh, SDR is nothing for me, calling to people that I don't know, I don't like. Why? Try it out. Just enjoy the moment. And I'm one of a million on this planet, and this planet is a point in a big universe. So don't take yourself so serious. So she said no, he said no. Okay, next one.
I don't think you can sell globally. Go step by step, focus. Don't do too many things at the same time.
If you make data-driven sales, you see it. As more calls you do, as more appointments you get. So it's very easy. If you do 100 calls, you get 10 appointments, and then you can sell one product. So if you do only 10 calls, you don't sell nothing.
When you're not super comfortable about sort of going out to customers, try to find a format that works for you. Maybe cold calling might not be the right thing right away. Go to events, try to meet them for coffee, use your network. I think even a lot of senior salespeople underestimate the power of referrals.
Don't use feedback to just criticize. Give actionable feedback. Like, make sure people understand why you said that and you want to make them better. I think the intrinsic motivation must be, I want you to do this better next time. I want you to be successful.
Thank you so much for joining today.
So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the 6th episode of The Founder Story, and a warm welcome to Google. I know it's the first kind of winter day, but it's great to be back. Great to see so many familiar faces, a couple of new ones as well. That means the community is growing. My name is Kevin Delissy. I'm part of the sales team here in Zurich, and I'll be your host tonight. So, can you believe it? Just a couple of months ago, it feels like not that long ago, we were 14 people when we had this grassroots initiative of starting this community. And look where we're here now. We're in the largest room on the Google campus. So, to stick with tradition, we have this one, as Google is also a digital native. We'll immortalize the moment with a quick selfie. So let's see if we get everybody in the picture. And last one for that group. Perfect. So, today's topic is people. But first things first. A big thank you from the organizing team, from Silvana, from Sarah, from Hans, who's unfortunately sick in bed with COVID, and from my side, and to you, the founders. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here where we're right now. So, we strive to provide you quality content, world-class panelists, and provide you with a platform for knowledge exchange, to make new connections. And we hope you connect among each other also outside of these monthly events. If you would like to post about it, you're more than welcome on social media, on LinkedIn. If you use the hashtag #TheFounderStoryGCP, that's even better. So why are we here? And what can you expect from tonight? So back in early 2022, we sat down with 14 different founders, and we asked them, what is missing in the startup ecosystem in Switzerland? And they told us basically two things. Yes, there are a number of events which are one-offs, but they don't really focus on community building and on knowledge exchange. And secondly, most founders will have one or two absolute key strengths, which we call superpowers. But they might not be as well versed in other aspects. So we took all these key strengths, and it boiled down to 5 categories. It was sales, people, product, funding, and marketing. So that has been our silver lining for the past sessions. And as our community was matured, we brought on new collaboration partners especially from the VC world. So there should be a representative from most of the VCs you see here below, and they'll be more than happy to have a chat with you later at the apéro. As for the last session, we would love to hear from you, love to engage with the panelists. So have your phones ready. We realize that you might not have cell reception here, so you can connect to the local Wi-Fi Google Guest. And don't worry, the QR code will be on the top right-hand side later on also as we have the panel discussion. You can also upvote questions. and we'll start answering them as from the most popular upvotes. So once again, a big thank you to all the panelists, past and future from 2022. You see there are quite a few of them. And we have a whole new lineup for 2023. We'll also have new topics, but before that, we'll have a special session on the 1st of December, kind of a wrap-up of the full year, with a couple of surprises. So we look forward to seeing you there. So today's topic is people. We already had one session on people, and that focused really on finding the right people, hiring them, and when things don't quite go well, what happens when you have to part ways. Today is going to be slightly different. We're going to look at everything that's between the hiring and the unfortunate parting ways. So we'll talk about retention, we'll talk about culture, and more specifically, we're going to talk about how corporate culture affects retention. And so because we're at Google, we love trivia. So we'll need some audience participation here. If you know the answer or you have a guess, just shout out. What do you think is behind those numbers? It is somewhat implied. So these are US-based numbers. I'll give you a second hint. Reminder, this is in the context of retention, people. Any guesses? I heard that. Yeah, absolutely. The number of resignations per year in the US labor market. So it's been a continuing trend, but it's absolutely exploded since the pandemic. And it really affects two different groups, the 18 to 29-year-olds and the ones up to 49. These are the most, I would say, concerned. But just resigning is really just a tip of the iceberg. In the press, the term, the Great Resignation, has been coined. But it doesn't mean that people leave the workforce. It might be that they're just moving for a different type of employment. And so the Great Resignation morphed into the Great Reshuffle. But there's also a second phenomenon, which is a little more worrying, is the quiet quitters, or the quiet quitting. What is that? It's when you don't really resign, but your mind has already kind of moved on to something else. And so Forbes wrote an interesting article about how corporate culture has a huge effect on an impact on retention. So, on that note, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Melanie Kovacs. She's an award-winning entrepreneur. She was Forbes 30 under 30, a TEDx speaker as well. In her previous role as managing director, she ran a program where over 1,000 people learned how to code. It was teaching them the basics. She had a very successful exit with Master 21 Academy, and now she is the founder of Joyworks. So, welcome on stage, Melanie. Good to have you. Before we start, one interesting fact about Melanie, which you should guess if that's true or not. Melanie told me that you have over 700 books at home. And you actually you scanned all the ISBN codes and then color-coded them and categorized them. And then you ran into somebody from, was it the library of the city of Zurich? And then they found that idea so amazing that they adopted it as well for the library of the city of Zurich? Did you believe that's true? Or is it like just, I'm going off script? If you hold up your hand if you believe that's true. Quite a few. Most of it is true, apart from the city of Zurich. That was our next panelist, Oriol Saludes. Oriol was born and raised in Tarragona, in Spain. And he came over to Switzerland as an intern at UBS. He thought it would be a 6-month internship, and it turned out to be 5 years. While he was at UBS, he started KEMIEX with his very good friend Pau. And from the get-go, KEMIEX was a global startup with offices across 3 continents. So, welcome on stage, Oriol. So, Oriol's interesting fact is he actually had never stepped foot in Zurich before coming for the job at UBS. And he actually came the day after he had his last exam at university. But he did have a plan B if that job at UBS didn't quite work. And that was a promising acting career in Thailand, was it? Yeah. I might have pushed it a little too far.
Get excited, huh?
True? Not true?
The first part may be true.
The first part was true, yeah.
It's quite rainy that day. Wasn't sure if it was the right choice.
So great to have you both here, Melanie, Oriol. It was a quick introduction of you two, but perhaps it's always the best to hear from founders and talk about their company. So could you give us like a rough, pitch nutshell of what Joyworks is, and then Oriol later on what KEMIEX is?
Sure. This works.
Yeah.
So Joyworks, or what I do these days, it's changing. So it's always hard to pitch when it's changing. But mainly it's supporting women to position their business to stand out. And so I think so many have an idea and a story or a product or service, but the problem is nobody ever heard of it. And then there's also like a lot of challenges, like, you don't want to say the wrong thing or do it the wrong way. So there's also like a lot of hidden challenges. And I think especially women like don't take up the space. And so, that's the current focus with like coaching and training. I also teach a startup course at the University of Zurich. This is for female and male founders so that's currently what I'm up to.
Very cool.
And in KEMIEX, what we've built is a trading platform, and which also provides information for the life science industry. So we help companies to buy and sell raw materials in the pharma, vet, and also food and feed industries. And we provide information as well on the side. So it's a bit, for anyone that has been in finance or that is related to finance, it's a bit like a Bloomberg terminal for these industries. With the ultimate goal, of course, is improving supply chain and hopefully reducing the cost of goods, which end up impacting the consumers. And that's what we're up to now.
Great to hear. So the topic today is culture, retention, team dynamics. So Melanie, when you coach and give guidance to founders, they come to you for multiple reasons. It could be, the strategy of the company. It could be about the business model. How quickly does the topic of culture come up in your first discussions? How far up is it in the pecking order of founders?
It's usually not very high up because I feel like it's something that's hidden below. You just maybe have a feeling that things are not working or you're stuck, but you don't know exactly why. And often it somehow has to do with culture, because culture, it's a big word, but in the end it comes down to what is actually lived and not kind of the motivational quotes or purpose statements that are on the walls and nobody actually remembers or lives. But how much do you actually help a colleague or a coworker or a co-founder when they're in stress or cannot do their work, or like that's culture day by day. So it wouldn't be, I think, something that somebody says, I have a culture problem, but you kind of feel something's off and you maybe don't know where to point it to.
Is it something that you stress from the get-go that you should set, and it's important to have a good corporate culture going forward? It will perhaps, alleviate a couple of problems down the road.
Well, I guess, in the end, it comes down to also you liking to go to work and spending time with the people that you work with, or also spending time with the people that you serve, like clients. So I do think, it's super important to have people around you mainly that you like spending time with. Of course, they also need to have the adequate skills and so forth. But yeah.
And Oriol, you built up KEMIEX with one of your very good friends, Pau. How was that? Well, what are the pros and cons of doing that?
It was a big risk, so it could have gone wrong. But yeah, I think the pros is you really work with someone, or we started KEMIEX working with someone that you really get along with. So you can speak clearly, you can really say what you're thinking, right? And you can support each other. The cons, of course, that usually the way you say it might not be the most professional sometimes. And coming from Spain, you might be even a bit more emotional. But I think it's good and it works. And I think that's why Hans, when I met him last time, he said if I wanted to join people, because I was so excited or enthusiastic about how important people is to make a project work, right? You could have a project that the product fit is not there yet, but if you have a good team that really pushes through, you can work through it and pivot and change whatever needs. If the people is not there, you will not raise funds, you will not sell, you will not have marketing, and you will not have a good product, right? So to me, it really comes down to this. And with Pau, I think so far it works. And yeah, we're still good friends.
And you started with him, knowing him extremely well, but then it was also very important to have a diverse team. So how did you go about that? Because, having a diverse core management was one of the important parts, no?
Yes, I don't think we proactively looked for a diverse team, but I think it somehow happened, right? I think Pau and I get along very well because we're different, right? But working, you're not always the same. And it really helps to have different strengths, different weaknesses, right? And then complement each other. And I think we're very lucky to have the management team or the core team that we have, because it really complemented that already symbiosis, let's say. And I think we're now getting ready to really go to the next step in the company. And it's mainly thanks to the team that we have today.
And Melanie, as a company is growing and scaling, when is the right moment to think about, okay, we should set up an HR department, we should have a chief of HR?
Yeah, it's a good question. Somebody needs to have the HR hat on. You can maybe not afford a dedicated HR role in the beginning. So it always depends on your business model, of course. But yeah, the more you need to hire people and so forth, the more you need to... depends how you also organize, right? At that UX agency that I worked with, I think we're like 24 or so before I left. And we didn't have a dedicated HR person, but we were like self-organized. So that meant that like whenever we were like hiring, let's say we wanted to hire a developer, like the developers had a say in who would join their team. So we had kind of like a matrix organization as well. But yeah, somebody needs to have like the hat on, or maybe several people, like some of them the administrative role of like informing the candidate and so forth, because that's also employer branding. If people want to join and apply and they never hear a reply back for like ages, not such a good image for the company.
Do you think being global as a startup has then a bigger need of having already an HR department? If you're all sitting together, you can be a bit more self-organized, or is scale, global footprint less of an impact on?
Good question. I don't know. You have a global company.
I was going to ask you the same. No, thanks for asking her all these difficult questions. So in our case, I wouldn't say we're struggling, but it's definitely a challenge, right? We started from Zurich, but there's now an office in Romania. There's now an office in Spain. There's an office in Bogota, in Colombia. And we have one person sitting in China. So it's definitely a challenge building the culture and building the team spirit and getting people engaged. We don't have someone doing HR at the moment, or you could say it's me as a COO, but we're seriously considering to bring that role, because it's for sure a challenge, and it's a very key function, right? If you bring the wrong people or people that don't fit in your culture, in your company, you definitely will have a problem in the future, right? So that's what we're now working on. So if you have any tips, I'll be happy to take them.
And you just touched upon an important point, talking about the spirit, the vision. So when you bring on new people, and you're bringing on quite a few new people, obviously you've got the core team. They're super motivated. They also have equity in the company. How do you sell that vision? How do you instill that culture?
We're working on it. So yeah, we're trying to travel more to the offices now. So be closer, because it really changes when you're having a coffee or a beer versus a Teams call, right? But yeah, it comes down to getting people to see, I think, the excitement from us and from clients as well, right? It's a product that is good, so it's something that is worth fighting for. But yeah, there's a lot to small details they need to, let's say, install in people's mind, right? It's not just that you will make a lot of money if you sell a lot, right? This being committed and helping colleagues and coming to work with a smile, right? So you have good energy when you call clients, they perceive that message or that energy. It's for sure something we're really working on, and we're learning by doing as well. So how is it for you? How was it in your previous, or also at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the question was about the vision, right? How important that is. I think that it's very key to that the team knows where you want to go together. So you don't need to micromanage or control too much on the way, but you have kind of a shared, more than a goal, a vision where you want, like a destination where you want to go. And then how you get there, ideally you have values that you share, and they're, again, like more than just words on a wall, but you actually lived values. And yeah, I mean, it can also be tricky. You know, I did this values exercise with my team early on at Mass 21, and, you know, we're like, yeah, of course we're offering courses over in education, so we need to be about learning and growing ourselves. But then it also turned out like, you know, I thought my one of the team members, she's also into learning, and she is a lot. However, it's different. So she loves to learn like technical stuff a lot, and for me, it's about like learning also the soft, you might call the soft stuff that is actually really hard at the end of the day, but also personally growing. So yeah, it's. I mean, in the end, people is all about, we're all human and we're all flawed and imperfect. And this comes up when you work together, which is super fascinating for me.
And how did you keep the balance between, so having the vision, having that creativity, but at the same time, you also have to execute on the back of that creativity. So how did you manage these two aspects?
I mean, not so well in the end, because that was one of the reasons why I decided to hand over the company and sell it, because having that team and always being responsible to manage it, even though like I didn't have to micromanage, they were very self-organized, but it's still like being there and also having the responsibility on your shoulders that, you know, you do the sales and the marketing and check that courses are filled, and so you can pay the salaries, and just I felt like, it's a heavy responsibility. So I felt at this point in time, I craved some more creative freedom. So that's why in the end, I decided to hand it over. I think it is a challenge that the more you grow, the less you do maybe what you truly love. I think there's also this, or maybe not just love, but also are good at to a certain point. I think in big companies, it's also the Peter principle, I think it's called, that you rise, or people rise to the level of their incompetence. and so, it's maybe a lot of founders have the vision and are creative, and then it grows, and you see this, and then once you're scaling up, you need different skills, and then it's maybe not as fulfilling. But maybe curious to hear how that was for you, or is for you.
Another good question. So we're really trying to, I think now the focus is the vision, to get people buying into the idea. But then there's a lot of calls and alignment and making sure that the team understands what the priorities are, right? People have different backgrounds. Like you said, everyone is flawed, no one is perfect, and everyone has different flaws. So trying to learn also ourselves how to deal with each different kind of personality so you can get the best of everyone without failing, right? Or without breaking yourself on the way. And yeah, really giving it at the moment for us, we are now in the process of finding out how do we bring this from 25 people that we're now to 100, 150, right? So you can keep the spark in people's eyes, if you want to call it like this, more romantic, but at the same time achieve also the numbers, right? You could say, I don't care if you don't believe in the vision as long as you do the numbers, but you need to find this fine balance, which is very challenging. So I don't know if that's the perfect answer, but it's really, where we are now today in KEMIEX. And it sounds like you had different or similar challenges in the previous situation. So it's not an easy one.
So in this startup journey, I mean, there's a momentum plays a huge role. That the highs are higher, the lows are lower. And so how do you keep that momentum going? And if it slightly changes and there's a team morale is slightly lower, how do you spot? We spoke about quiet quitters. That's probably the extreme. But how do you spot this in advance? Do you have any same metrics, or everybody's different. But are there hints that you picked up over time where you can say, we should be careful here?
I mean, one thing that worked quite well for me is doing one-on-ones. Depending on the size of your team, at some point it's not so possible anymore with everyone in your team, but for my team it was still possible every week. And I feel, and not just talk about, these are the tasks, you didn't get these done or whatever, but also like, how are you truly feeling? Like, how is it going for you? And I feel like you notice it, or people tell you whether they're happy or not, or what they need.
And you mentioned, Oriol, about scaling quickly from the 25 people to 100 people. You will need some kind of system to onboard people quickly. I think you've launched recently an LMS system as well.
Yeah,
how did that come about?
With POW, we decided quite early on that if we wanted to scale, right, it helps coming from banks, very scalable and efficient organizations. If you want to scale fast, you need to be ready to scale fast, right? If you don't have an organized process and you bring 10 people, you have a big mess. So we built our own academy. I think it was a year and a half ago. And now, it's still ongoing, right? It's a work in progress, but when a new joiner joins, you get a bit the content that you need to know, right? Be it industry knowledge, be it systems, be it how do we sell, how does our platform work, right? So you get that in like a small, like a library, online library where you can check, there's quizzes, right? And that allows someone to arrive and really get up to speed faster than they would otherwise if you have to spend the hour or 2 hours every day explaining this new part of the platform, right? So for us, it's working well, but now we're, for example, working on further polishing this. The first week, do you need further sessions? Do you need calls with the different departments to understand the vision, right? And how each piece of the puzzle brings a puzzle together, right? So it's now very important for us. And I think this year we've brought around 10 people year to date. So you really feel like the first one that came in January had probably not as nice onboarding as the last one that came earlier in mid-October, right? So you can see, and it's quite rewarding to see that they appreciate arriving to a company that is maybe not so big, but that has this kind of process or onboarding, landing to the company that is helping them to do good at their job faster than they otherwise would.
And have you received feedback from the new joiners, that they liked it, they enjoyed this upskilling?
I ask because I'm, let's say, also in charge of all this part. So I try to always get feedback, and what they say is that it really helps them, right? You arrive to a company that is new. In our case, we're talking about selling an online platform to an industry that is very people-driven, right? No pun intended, but it's very relationships and knowing each other. So you're bringing an online tool, which means if you want to convince someone like this, you need to know the industry and how it works and why it would help them or not. So our first months in the job is a lot of understanding what you're going to face with clients. And this is definitely a really, let's say, very good help for them. And people say it like, without this, it would have taken me longer to understand when a client has a concern or understand why an answer is this way or the other. So it's for sure helping. And I think also something that we're very lucky with is the team. Everyone is very welcoming, and we treat, still today, it sounds very stereotypical, but we treat each new person as a family member, right? Mm-hmm. It's not that we take them to our grandma's place, but you really try to make them feel like this is a team that works together. And if you're struggling, there will be someone, even if it's in Bogota, that will take the time to help you. So this is also something that people appreciate when they arrive, at least in KEMIEX.
Mm-hmm. And as the company matures, people are there for more years. Apart from upskilling, they also look at career progression. How was it in your case for Academy 21?
You mean now the people that took the courses, basically?
No, the people that were in your startup at Academy 21.
In terms of career progression?
Yes.
I mean, I think before hiring the people, I always really try to understand what drives these people and what are their goals, like apart from this specific job, and like seeing whether there's a match, whether like we can help them get there with what we're doing. So whether this is aligned, I think that's super important because you were intrinsically motivated, and when kind of the job helps you get where you anyway want to go. So, for example, in our case, one of the teachers, like I saw a lot of potential in her, but she just started to teach, which was actually great in our case because we have beginners, and so she could still remember what it was like for her to learn to program, and so she could like step into the shoes again of these beginners in the beginner's mind. And so for her, it was a huge opportunity to teach, and I just saw like her potential and her passion for this. So, I feel like, and also what I'm proud about, like these days actually, or afterwards, she then founded her own company. I feel like there was not like a written down career plan or anything, so we're still pretty small. But to kind of support each other, like growing in the direction that you want to grow. I think it's very, very crucial.
And perhaps the last point before we come to our next panelist. I mean, the startup world can be sometimes really tough. It can be a grind. It works, and you mentioned, sometimes there's a lot of execution. That creativity is sometimes on the side. I know you've got a personal story of how you found joy again because you spent a lot of time at work, and how you came from that low and found back joy and love what you're doing. Maybe you want to tell us more about that.
Sure. I guess I continue with where I started, in the sense of like why I decided to leave kind of my first company, which was also, by the way, a very hard decision because, like you start this thing and you had, like I had, of course, a much huger vision where I wanted to go with this company. And so I definitely went through all like these, they say when somebody dies or then you go through the stages of grief. And I think when a big project that you loved comes to end, it's also like the anger, the sadness, like all the emotions that the Swiss people also have, not just the Swedish ones.
I'm sure.
But I took some time. Like I intentionally said, I'm not going to look like for work or do anything paid for a while. I think like a half a year. I also did an education program that I just then finished in creative leadership in Amsterdam, where like, so many different things in the end. Like I started a podcast, not with the idea to like, I don't know, position myself, but rather with the intention of like, I want to have an excuse to have interesting conversation with interesting people. And these days, people are very happy to be invited to be on a podcast. So that's a project I started just for myself to kind of learn. And also there is this term called working out loud. I think it also goes towards reflecting out loud. So I'm a big fan of like, you don't need to have it all figured out until you, I don't know, post on LinkedIn or share something. It can also serve, or also the conversations on a podcast, like, I didn't want to position myself as an expert in anything, but rather like, just reflect out loud, and by that learn and kind of see where the journey takes us. And like that. Then one thing led to the other. People kept telling me when we did like at the educational program in Amsterdam, when we did peer coaching, I never thought I was gonna become a coach. Like that was never on my agenda. But people kept telling me, oh yeah, like you're such a natural at this. Have you ever thought about this? And then later, like that time, I realized like, why not? And I realized I can truly help people that want to start a company and just have an idea. And so that's then how that started. I also wrote a lot. I think I had a time where I wrote every day and published every day for like over 100 days, which again, like reflecting out loud helps a lot to make sense, or at least me. Like some people's medium is maybe video or audio or whatever, but for me, actually, in the end, it's writing to just get clarity on my thoughts, what I'm actually thinking, and making sense of things. I mean, we're meaning-making creatures, and so like a lot of these things then help to just point me in the direction that where I am like right now.
How's it for you, Oriol, to find joy in
highs and lows? I think again comes back to the team we have, or at least here in Zurich. So we're not many, but the fact that we're different when one is in the lows, let's say, and not very excited about what's happening in that day, then you have the other one picking up the mood, right? So I think for me, it's something I really appreciate to have co-founders and partners, let's say, that have become friends that help to go through this more emotional roller coaster, right? Because they always say like it's very lonely at the top somehow, right? So no one comes to you and say, well done, right? Everyone comes with the complaints or the problems. And I think it really helps us to somehow support each other, like when one needs a bit more help or a pat on the back. But it's for sure also learning by doing. I haven't taken any course yet, so maybe something. But it's for sure a very interesting part, because you are ultimately dealing with people with their problems, personalities, and flaws, as you said. So, it's for sure never-ending exercise, right?
Maybe to add, though, like one concept that helped me a lot is called Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept for those that don't know. Like it's basically the circles of what you're good at, what you love doing. Ideally, these overlap and you're not just doing what you're good at, but actually not so much enjoy. Then there's a circle of like what the world needs, so doing good, and what the world pays for. And so it's, I think, on an individual level, but also on a company mission level, it's very nice to finding that sweet spot. But then also being aware of like maybe one project or job or work doesn't need to fulfill all these needs. And that was a big insight for me. Like maybe my need to be creative, I can do it on the side. And then my need to make money can be a different project. Then my need to like serve people doesn't need to be all squeezed in that one job that needs to make me happy, and I need to do good and make money. So that was kind of also an insight from that journey that may be helpful or not if somebody is looking for meaning and joy in some way.
Cool, thanks a lot. We'll move to our next panelist, Adrian Uhlig. So Adrian joined Google 4 months ago. Welcome, Adrian. Adrian, before Google, you were at Fundtobel, and before that you were at Amazon, you were head of marketplace there. And your interesting fact is that you've been an early adopter of Gmail. I heard for 20 years. Do you think that's true? That was actually a trick question. Gmail has been around for 18 years, but you've been an early adopter since 2004 of Gmail.
That's right, yes. Yeah. And I'm still, yes.
So, Google was the topic of a movie. The Internship also came out in 2004. And the big topic behind that movie was also the culture at Google.
Yeah.
How important is the culture right now in 2022 at Google?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I need to say I haven't watched the movie, but it's good you're reminding me. So next time when I flip through Netflix and I don't know where to land, I just need to convince my wife probably to watch an internship movie. No, but on your question, I mean, yeah, obviously culture is super critical. I mean, I might be biased, right? I work in HR, in people ops, as we call it here, and culture has been always close to my heart. And yeah, my HR team and I mean, we eat strategy for breakfast, right? So definitely. I think on a personal note, working in a company which is exciting, which is fun, which is engaging, where I just naturally want to bring in my best, obviously is more productive versus in a cultural environment where I don't feel so. And if I think about Google, I mean, Google is around for only 20 years, which is really not a long time. But if I think about the culture at the very beginning, 20 years ago, when it was founded in a garage by two engineers somewhere in California, at that time they had the similar core cultural aspects than we still have today. So, for example, when it comes to our mission or some core values like transparency and making sure everyone has a voice and can raise that voice.
And I mean, Google has grown tremendously from from the moment it was in the garage to now to over 100,000 employees. Obviously, a lot coming from outside. They've got an impact on the culture. Are there specific kind of steps that are taken to keep the culture going in one direction rather than another, or is that simply organically happening?
Yeah, maybe it's both. I mean, I think a fundamental mindset that we have and always try to have is if we bring in someone new, we are not looking for a cultural fit. We're looking for someone who is a cultural add. And if I think about my kind of previous experiences in other companies, and also at Google, it happens, of course, I see sometimes hiring managers who are looking for someone that is more or less the same as they are, that have a similar background, maybe a similar career, maybe comes from a similar cultural surrounding, someone that is just similar because it increases harmony, it is just easier to handle with, it maybe fits better to the team. And I think overcoming that and going more into the direction of looking for someone who brings in a very different perspective, diversity, is in the end a value add to the company. So yes, as we are growing, the culture changes, but I think it organically also changes for the good as we bring in new perspectives, and that drives obviously innovation and different thinking.
And Google is very much data-driven. So can you measure a healthy culture?
I don't think we have the holy grail, to be honest. I mean, measuring culture is always very difficult. I think we have some concepts like Google Geist, which is a survey that we do. We also have a manager survey which we run, where we ask Googlers to assess their managers on a few traits and behaviors. And then probably culture is a huge buzzword as well, right? So you need to think about, I believe, what does culture mean for you? And here at Google, we have 6 kind of traits or 6 pillars. And one might be, for example, hiring or recruiting. And this one for sure you can measure in itself, right? Or another one is environment, which is very important for us. So when you look around, I mean, you see office spaces where Google really invest into to make sure that people feel well as they are at work. And that's what we're measuring as well, right? So do people like to come to the office? Do they enjoy? Do they build relationships? Do we build a community here?
How is it, Oriol, at KEMIEX? Are you starting to measure these things as well, or that's probably something down the road when you're growing and you'll be a 100-people company?
Well, I guess, like you said, like culture, you want to do it early on. With this, we're also trying to work on it. Of course, the budget is not Google's budget, so you cannot just buy a building in next to Habe in Zurich. But sorry, no, one day. But yet, of course, you want to bring an environment that is welcoming. I don't know, ideally a cool office that you want to spend time in. And yeah, I think the team also contributes there. You can have the fanciest or the nicest office. If there's no one around or you don't like the people that is going, you probably you prefer to stay home. So yeah, it's a formula we're working on. We don't have the resources yet to measure it very precisely, but it's something that is for us right now really at the core of what we want to solve before we go to the 150 people, right? So.
And if I think back at I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but 20 years ago when it was just a garage, there were these core values which persist still today. Like, for example, one is, at that time, TGIFs already existed. Thank God it's Friday. And the founders, together with the Googlers, came together every Friday. They celebrated a week, and everyone could ask questions, and the founders kind of answered. And that is still true today. We still have it, obviously now digital. We have a digital tool for it, etc. We don't come physically together, but we come together as a company. And I think what helped Google, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it had been successful over the years, is to really be clear what is the fundamental cultural aspects that kind of drives the culture. And yeah, here it is, kind of having a mission and kind of having transparency and voice.
Was it this clear since the beginning?
It's funny. Yeah, I saw a video. I think it was on YouTube probably, where the two founders, they were at a university and they were talking with other students about their idea of founding a company. And you see in the background already a slide with the mission that we still have today to organize the world's information. So yeah, they hold it until today.
Interesting. So
you spoke about transparency and being able to speak directly to, for instance, the founders. That's also a lot tied down to psychological safety, which was the term that was, realized that when teams have psychological safety, they're willing to take more risks. How is that continuously, encouraged on a day-to-day basis?
So maybe let me go a step back. We had a research that we did across Google where we tried to assess what makes teams successful. And it was a quite sophisticated research. They assessed hundreds of teams and they did a credible amount of interviews. And they really want to drill it down. What is different from a team that had been successful in delivering versus other teams that did not? And it's called Project Aristotle, and it's publicly available if you're interested to read. And they found five behaviors or five traits, and the most important one was psychological safety. So it was not really who was sitting in the team; it was about how those in the team were kind of interacting and working together. And in a way, it sounds natural, right? If people feel comfortable, if people can speak up, if people can have a different opinion than maybe the opinion leaders, obviously that leads to better results versus if everyone kind of speaks and thinks alike.
And Melanie, one topic I know you're very passionate about is when you're coaching your founders, especially female founders, to encourage them to think big, dream big. How do you go about that to encourage this?
to dream big, or about
to dream
like
big and execute big, and have the that safety net. Okay, I can try this.
I mean, I feel also in Switzerland, like when we talk about entrepreneurship, most people, it's also good to acknowledge like most of us don't become entrepreneurs because we have to like survive and make ends meet. So versus in other countries, I think in that aspect, we're in a very privileged position here, which is also good to acknowledge. So for a lot of people, I feel like entrepreneurship become more of like this, I don't know, luxury, finding myself or trying something out, playing field. And so when it's more like this, then you don't have a lot to lose, right? I think in Switzerland with such low unemployment rate, you can easily get a job again, or most in my circle and network, most can get a job again. So I think like the tool fear setting is always good. So, I mean, one thing is, think big, but then there's all these fears that, we're human and we all have our doubts and insecurities. And so a tool that I like is from Tim Ferriss. It's called fear setting. It's very much looking into versus not goal setting, but looking at what is holding you back and like really also visualizing like what's the worst case what scenario that could happen. Possibly if you, I don't know, fired a person, or if you left your job and did this thing for real, or whatever, like is making you afraid. And then also thinking through what can you do to recover if that worst case would truly happen. I mean, I think in probably 95% it will not happen out of experience. And then also what can you do to prevent it? And so then most people see that they're actually capable to handle the situation pretty well, whatever comes. But it's kind of also learning to deal with uncertainty, because we're in a very uncertain field, like as entrepreneurs, building something new, bringing it on the market. Most of us have never done this before. And so, it's learning to handle uncertainty.
A last question for you, Adrian, around hybrid work. Hybrid work is something that was already around at Google before the pandemic, but it's been became kind of across the board. It's now very common. But quite a few employees have some reticence, let's put it this way, to come back to work. So what have you seen that works best to entice employees to come back and find that balance between hybrid work?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think every company would have a different strategy when it comes to hybrid work, right? It needs to really fit to the company and the purpose of the company. And some companies obviously need to have higher office presence than others. So I think it first starts with, as a company or as a leadership team or a founder, thinking about what is really important for us. And at Google, we decided we want to have people back 3 days in the office in a week. When I meet with other companies, what I hear is some are saying, hey, 1 day in the office is very much sufficient for me. And then obviously the other extreme exists as well. I'm not sure. I mean, what you want to always provide, whether if it's in the office or at home, is an inspiring environment where people feel good, right? Where people, as we said, can speak up, where people can really bring in their best, where it's just also fun to collaborate and be together. And then I think it will naturally come. What we see here is that the office presence is higher in Switzerland versus in other countries, just because the convenience is higher, right? It's a different experience as an employee when you live in Wollishofen, like I do. Coming here into the office is pretty simple, versus when you are somewhere in London or New York and you go into a crowded metro and stay there for 1.5 hours.
The commute is longer, yeah.
The commute and the convenience is just better here. Yeah, and that sometimes it's just this natural aspects as well which bring people back.
Yeah, and if I may, like you said, something interesting, like an environment that inspires our best. So I don't know whether home office, depending, if there are kids around, or is truly the environment. I mean, I know I'm pretty productive also because I don't take a lot of breaks or don't talk to a lot of people. But then in terms of like, do people have like an inspiring environment at home? It's interesting to ask.
It's probably more difficult as a manager to provide an environment or a team culture where it's fun as well for those who are just kind of connecting remotely from work, from home. But it's also, I mean, we got our son 2.5 years ago, so really during COVID. And in hindsight, super lucky about this time. We had just more time together at home. And it was kind of inspiring in a different way, right? It was just purposeful for me. And I was so thankful that I could have this opportunity stepping out of my office room kind of for 15 minutes, playing with him and then going back. Versus in my job before, I was flying around and traveling and had basically no family time. So yes, that adds in a way to my satisfaction.
Thanks a lot. Now we would love to hear from you guys in the audience. You can still take go on the QR code, and I would ask you to move to Mentimeter so we can look at the first questions which have been submitted. So, can you talk about the best practices when it is time to scale culture? How does it change when the company is remote or even partly remote? Was that for any specific panelist? Or would one of you would like to take the question?
I can take it. I mean, we're still, as I said, we're on the way, right? In our case, we started since the beginning with fragmented teams, right? So it's not easy. But yeah, I don't know if what we do is best practices or not, right? I can talk about our experience. We try to have, for example, every second week we do like online beers at the time that everyone can connect, right? We have someone in China that is 10 p.m. on a Friday that takes the time to join, but in Colombia it's 9 or 8 a.m., right? So they have coffee. So, but
that's a rough morning.
Yeah. So, it's not the best for anyone because it's not super convenient for the two extremes, but at least you make sure that you get together, talk about, I don't know, weekend plans or what happened, or if someone went to Disneyland, whatever it is, right? So it helps to bring people together. And I think it I don't know if it's so much about the culture of the values that we have, but it for sure helps to build the team spirit, and then people help each other. So in our case, we're partly remote, I'd say. But yeah, answering or commenting what Adrian said, in our case, it helps a lot if people are together because you learn from how others sell it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're as much as I like the academy we built, is not the same than hearing someone doing a sale on the phone, right? So we've seen that it for sure helps to get people better and faster. But yeah, it got to a point that it's somehow a must-have. You cannot just say we all go to the office every day because it's not as well received. So we have a hybrid model as well, 3 days office and 2 days from home.
What is the best way to evaluate or interview an HR people or recruiting lead at CHR?
Is it for you?
I can give it a try. Well, I think the same as with every hire that you do, right? So I think it's at least from my perspective, it's important that you understand. I mean, that first of all, you need to be clear on what you assess on, right? What is really critical for the company's success. You might want to call it success drivers or your leadership principles or whatever it is in the company, which are kind of really the core values that you believe you need as a company in order to go to success. And then you assess the candidates based on those criteria. Whether it's HR or any other function, I don't know if that would be a difference.
I would like to add, I mean, maybe it's different once you're a very big company like Google, but
So I give it to him.
like in a small company, it's also super important, like gut feeling that like, do you like this person? Because yeah, I mean, maybe it's a question, do you need to like somebody to be able to work effectively together? I would say so, especially when you're a small team. So I would not like discard like the emotional factors.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, of course, you need to get along, right? But just what I always think is there is a bias for similarity, right? And being aware of that and making sure that you're just not hiring the same person as you are yourself, of course, yeah, I think that can help.
Sure. I mean, I think what also always helps is not to be the only person. Or maybe also like doing a test period. Like I'm a big fan of just trying things out. So maybe it's not even the normal probation time that we have of 3 months, but maybe it's doing project together for like a month or two. Yeah. And then you both need to decide, do you want to continue this? It's not just like, oh, if something's terribly wrong, we quit or we fire, but it's like kind of a limited project.
And does it work that people come for 2 months or for a month? Because I like the idea, but of course, if you're quitting a job just to go for a project or a month and then it doesn't work out, right? It's a downside.
Yeah, of course, depends on the person's situation. In my case, I did this once and it worked out. But depends.
Yeah, and maybe just to add one, there are very good HR leaders out there who are actually not from the HR function. At least that's my personal experience. And being in HR, I can also say sometimes HR is not a rocket science, right? So having someone from the business who has an interest to move into HR and kind of learn the topics naturally can also be an option to evaluate.
Which pitfalls are there to avoid? In your experience, what would you say are the top 3 corporate culture wrecking balls?
Pass.
Anybody willing to take that one?
It's so interesting to see who asks these questions, so we can get a bit more context
to test.
I think I can try. I can start with one. I think what is super important on culture is that you lead it from the top. So a true pitfall is when you say the one thing but you behave the other way, whatever that might be. That will not work. And then maybe second, culture. Obviously, it needs to fit to the company, right? I remember an article that I just read recently. It was about an experiment where they put founders into a room, and in the room they had a poster on the wall of each of the mission from each of the company. And the task was that each of those CEOs or founders, that they should go to the poster with the mission that belongs to their company. And it ended up with a huge mess. And reason is not that they never heard about their mission. Reason is that it really sounded alike. They were very much alike. So I think maybe a pitfall is as well to define something which is just a buzzword kind of approach versus selecting something which is really specific and true to the company.
I would like to add that maybe what you're tolerating, people see that. So if, let's say, you have a person that doesn't really fit your team and you're like, oh, like, nice person, I don't want to fire them or whatever, or have that talk. Like, people feel that you're tolerating this, and morale goes down usually. So, or like, you're setting an example of what you tolerate. So I think they're also being aware of this. It kind of spreads a message. I think especially as like a leader, founder, you're always kind of being a role model, and what you say usually has more. People are listening more, and so I think being very much aware of this is important.
And maybe add something which is kind of really meaningful, which has a purpose, like, for example, a cultural aspect of or a target of adding shareholder value. I mean, what does that mean, right? That's important maybe for the shareholders, but it's certainly not important or so important to the employees. At least it's not really inspiring. So maybe having as well cultural aspects or drivers that kind of where people can find a purpose and a reason to stand up every morning and go to work.
One for you, Adrian. You mentioned that psychological safety is the most important aspect of the Google research that was done about teams. How does Google assess that in the interview process?
I think the true answer is we don't assess it specifically. We have a few factors that we look at. One is we call it Googliness, which is how much we believe a person really adds to the culture, kind of feels well here and is willing to to contribute to the culture. And obviously, if we would find a candidate in an interview process who is who doesn't believe in our core values under those psychological safety or making sure that everyone can bring in the best, they would probably not pass the interview, hopefully at least. But we don't have kind of a specific, let's say, question or so that we assess on. I think it's really then once you are getting in and once you are onboarding and once you are getting to know the company and once you observing others as well, how they behave, where hopefully new candidates can also or see how critical it is. And I'm now 4 months in the company, and I can say when I had a situation where I felt psychological safety is at risk, there was always someone who was speaking up. And that's super meaningful. You go out of this meeting and you take that just with you. And next time you'll be maybe the bystander that speaks up when psychological safety is at risk.
How can you assess culture fit during the interview process? How do you account for cultural differences?
Oh. You go. You're the expert.
Yeah, not sure if I am, but so I think, as I tried to say, it's not really about fit, it's more about add, right? So the interviewer first needs to be ready to look at a candidate which is really kind of also non-similar or which brings in some very different aspects and has a very kind of different background. I think a lot here starts as well with setting expectations to the interviewers and making sure they are well trained, they understand what are our core fundamentals, what is the value, and making sure they qualify for running interviews in the way that Google has learned it to be the best way. How do you account for cultural differences? It's a difficult question. Any idea?
In our case, like cultural differences are welcome, let's say, so it's good to have different points of view, but we're not yet at a state that you can assess the culture fit and put a ranking to it, right? So it's a bit the bias that you were mentioning, the likability or how much you connect with the person. We try to involve different people in the process, so everyone gets their own opinion and then you put it together. But yeah, I think these are to me, it sounds like a Google kind of problem, not like a startup kind of problem. In a sense, like you hire who you can hire, right? It's probably the topic you had the other time, right? How do you find talent? How do you bring that talent without paying above market, right? And how do you make them believe in the core values you have? So I hope I get to have this kind of problems in the future, but right now it's still a bit far.
Crossing fingers, you will. Yeah, definitely. I think it's maybe also part of the process how we hire. So, for example, we try to build up connections really early on, even before the person actually applies to Google. So that could be through university programs. That could be we have a team that is kind of doing outreach. So they focus, for example, on minority groups, and they really approach them very early on and build kind of relationships, or events like this, right, where we just network and connect, and by that you probably get also candidates which are not kind of the ones from the typical market. It's not just that you open the door and you take what the market basically delivers you. We are trying to actively as well search and look for a variety of profiles.
I see there are 29 questions altogether.
Are these the upvoted ones, or is this just in order?
These are the upvoted ones. I think we can take one more, and that is still one or two things we would like to share with you. So, how do you ensure that employees across the globe are aligned and understand corporate priorities? And how do you deal with fast-growing teams, not to dilute company culture?
Well, you're global as well, right?
Trying.
So I think a lot goes back to this core fundamental of transparency. We do have, I just watched it 2 days ago, a recording of the TGIF. We still have it. I think it is... I think it's really fundamental to our culture. So we would have our CEO and his leadership team speaking about business results, about priorities that they are focusing on, and then employees across the world basically asking questions. And by that, you understand as an employee, even you are far away, really what are the priorities of the company. And also the other way around, the leadership teams, from the questions that they get through this technical tool that we have, it's called Dory, where everyone can submit a question and then upvote, similar like here with Menti. Leadership teams as well understand what is really top of mind for people and what are they bothering about.
So I would say we switch from the Q&A. That's still a lot of discussion material for later on at the apéro. One thing before we close today's chapter, I would like to mention that there is an event on the 29th of November. There's a QR code. It will be outside as well if you want to just book it then in your agenda. And finally, so before you go out, some of my colleagues will be here, either down here at the top, and they will give you a little sticker. And whichever key strengths or superpower that you feel is best determines you, you can take a sticker, and that'll be a good icebreaker later on at the apéro. As usual, we would love to hear from you. We tried something new last time. We would like to connect digital native startups with large Swiss enterprises. We have very good connections built from the sales team. However, we realized it didn't work quite according to plan because people would just say the company would like to be connected with, but we didn't know who it was, as the feedback is anonymous. So if you can add your company and who you would like to be connected with, and we'll do our best to make that happen. This QR code will also be outside in case. I'll leave it a couple of seconds longer. And finally, we really look forward to seeing you all on the 1st of December. Thank you again, Melanie, Oriol, and Adrian. Pleasure to be here. And we look forward to seeing you all on the 1st of December back in this room. Thanks a lot.